Hi, everyone. This is Susan Mag-Salmon. I think we're going to go ahead and get started this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. A couple of housekeeping things I wanted to go over as we start into the webinar. The first is that we'd love for you to use the chat to talk with each other, share your thoughts and ideas. We'll be monitoring the chat throughout the hour. When you have a question, please use the Q&A feature so that we can make sure that we address as many questions as possible. When we've had webinars in the past, we get a lot of questions, and often we can't answer them all during this time period. So we will be sure to capture all the questions and also go ahead and respond in a group email over the next week or two so that we ensure that we get answers back to everyone in the best way that we can. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start a small presentation to just give you a little bit of background on the NeuroArts Blueprint and move us into the conversation today around community NeuroArts coalitions. Okay, let me just move this here. Great. So again, thank you for joining us. I wanted to just give you a little bit of information about how the NeuroArts Blueprint began and a little bit about the organizations that have been working as stewards on this project. So as I said, I am Susan Mag-Salmon, and I'm at the International Arts and Mind Lab at Johns Hopkins University, where I am the director of something called the Center for Applied Neuroaesthetics. And in short, we're really a translational lab that's very interested in looking at how we can better understand the neurobiology and biology of the arts and behavior, and how that can be translated into practice. My colleague, Ruth Katz, who is with us today, who is the Vice President of the Health, Medicine, and Society program at the Aspen Institute, joined us about 3 years ago now, almost 3.5 years ago in 2018, to begin talking about how we might come together to think about building a field that we're now calling NeuroArts. What's interesting about Aspen is that Aspen was really founded on this idea of the importance of the arts. In the late 40s, they came together to really think about how to create change through dialogue and leadership and action. And that's really looking at change and impact at a global level. And so the Health, Medicine, and Society program is really an amazing convener that brings together influential groups and really helps to solidify and create strategy and impact in a number of different areas around health and medicine that can have very large impact around the world. So we're really excited to be working together with Aspen to develop the blueprint. And Ruth is on the call today, and I think you may join in on some of the Q&A a little bit later. So the goal of the blueprint is really very succinct. It's to ensure that the arts and the use of the arts in all of its many forms become part of mainstream medicine and public health. And as you can imagine, in doing that, it requires a multi-tiered approach and strategy in order to really be able to make that happen. And I'm going to share a little bit more about that with you in a moment. We define NeuroArts as the study of how the arts and aesthetic experiences measurably change the brain, body, and behavior, and how this knowledge can be translated into specific practices that enhance health and well-being. When we look at NeuroArts broadly, you can see that there are these three intersecting circles, looking at the arts as a core element, health and science and technology. And over the last 20 years, we have seen that technology has been a catalyst for growing this work in a number of ways, including looking at research and the kinds of biomarkers. So think about fMRIs or EEG, the ability to non-invasively look inside the brain and also be able to measure and take additional kinds of biomarkers that we haven't been able to really capture before. But also on the dissemination side, And I think we all probably have been, have had access to technology through telehealth, through the pandemic, and seeing the role of technology as an accelerator for dissemination and scaling. So we've been very interested in thinking about how technology as an art form even can be helpful in some of the work that we're doing towards health and well-being alongside with arts and health and sciences. So in the blueprint, we talk a lot about many ways of knowing. I've talked about body and brain and behavior, but there's also many valuable ways that we capture information and know more about something. So, this chart just illustrates that, we're really interested in listening to the way artists bring knowledge to the table, the way lived experience is so invaluable, and who has a place at the table, and what is the table, generalized knowledge, and really trying to understand theories and logic models, and then sort of really thinking more deeply at the way that we think about different types of public health research, basic science research, social sciences. So all of that's really part of this world of ways of knowing. Very briefly, after 2.5 years of stakeholder gatherings and having our ear to the table as stewards of thinking about this work, the blueprint was released last December. And there are 5 priority values, 5 recommendations, and 5 core findings that you can find on neuroartsblueprint.org. But the 5 recommendations I just wanted to share with you briefly, and then talk a bit about some of the priorities as we move into this next conversation that we're going to have today. And they are strengthening the research foundation of neuroarts, honoring and supporting the many ways practice, the many arts practices that promote health and well-being, expanding and enriching education and career pathways, advocating for sustainable funding and promoting effective policy, and that's both public and private policy and funding. And then the last is building capacity, leadership, and communication strategies. So over the last year, we have developed an implementation plan that addresses all 5 of these recommendations and looks to tier them through milestones and deliverables that make sense on a path to building a field. And to just talk about that a little more deeply, we've organized those recommendations into 3 priority areas. The first is building infrastructure, second, continuing to build evidence, and then the third, building community. In building infrastructure, I just want to take a quick moment to share some of the things that we've done and focused on in this first year, which are to begin to lay the foundation for creating what I call a virtual watering hole. So we will be building a NeuroArts resource network that will launch in just about a year. And it's an opportunity to be able to bring all of the different stakeholders together, whether you're a researcher, a practitioner, an advocacy group, a policymaker, a professional association, and all the other stakeholders that really enter into this. And I'll be sharing more about this early part of next year to talk a bit more about sort of how that resource network will be developed. The second is to convene an academic research consortium. The third is to assemble community neuroarts coalitions, and that's the main conversation that we're going to be talking about today. And then the third is to bring out of our advisory board a research advisory committee that can help serve to look at some of the other initiatives that we'll be bringing forward in the implementation plan. Whoops. So with that, let me take my screen down and talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. So as I mentioned, as part of the infrastructure, we'll be working to build a community neuroarts coalition network. And we wanted to spend a little bit of time today introducing you to two local community groups that have been doing really amazing work. The idea of a community arts coalition is something that happens at a local level. So I think for many of the people on the call today, in your local community, you are working with sometimes cultural arts organizations, individual artists, university partners, sometimes research partners who are coming together to address a specific issue, could be a health or well-being issue within your community. That's what we define as a community NeuroArts coalition directly in your community. What we're trying to do with the NeuroArts Blueprint is be able to network all of these hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations together so that we can learn from each other, begin to build best practices, and really hopefully be able to feel like we're more effective within the work that we're doing. So today we have two organizations with us who are going to share a bit about their local community NeuroArts coalitions. The first is Palm Health Foundation, and the second is the Lori M. Tisch Illumination Fund and Gibney, who is one of their community partners. So let me turn it over to Patrick McNamara from the Palm Health Network to talk a bit more about his work.
Thank you so much, Susan. It's really a thrill to be with you all today. I want to share a little bit about who Palm Health Foundation is and how we came to be involved in this NeuroArts work. Palm Health Foundation has been around since 2001. We're both a grant maker and a funder, as well as a fundraising organization. We focus on all the different ways that we can lead change for better health in Palm Beach County, Florida. And we have learned that there are a variety of ways that we can do that. So we focus specifically on three primary areas: advancing brain health, building a culture of health, and strengthening the health professions. And in our work, we have learned a tremendous amount about the need for greater community collaboration and bringing community to the table. So we are a big believer in the power of networks. We have helped to establish two networks that I'm going to refer to in Palm Beach County. One is a growing brain health network that ties together the amazing brain science assets that we have here in our community, along with the community itself in a bi-directional way. In terms of communication, and the goal of connecting that brain science research with the community is ultimately to improve care. So we're looking to really create a nexus among those three. The other network that we have helped to create is a culture of health network. And you can change the thinking about the brain science research there and that scientific research circle on your screen to health in general. And so how are we tying health, science, and understanding to the community and improving care? In working with the community and developing these networks, we learned that this is often slow, patient work in developing relationships and really building trust. I would liken it more to gardening over time as opposed to building a structure. But that patient, slow work really pays off. And the fruits of that work in gardening has just been tremendous, and we're really fortunate to be a part of it here in Palm Beach County. It resulted, that partnership work resulted in our county winning the National Culture of Health Prize from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation in 2021. And you see here many of the examples of the collaborative work and the expression of the community arts that once we ask the community, each of our communities, what can you do? What would you want to do in terms of improving health in your community? We found all kinds of artistic expression coming up as a result of that. One of the examples through a mini grant process that we provided in our Healthier Together work was to build a unity wall. And the wall itself was already in existence. It actually separated the Black and white communities historically in Lake Worth Beach. But the community decided to create an artist wall of unity on that existing wall. So it is a beautiful several block wall of that features works of art by local artists. We also had a mini grant recipient proposing something called a youth explosion in the rural area of the Glades, where youth choirs would have a sort of battle of the bands. And it was an absolutely phenomenal experience, very exciting. And so once we open this up to the community, and given the rich cultural assets that we have here in Palm Beach County, as well as the rich brain science assets, when we learned about the NeuroArts Blueprint, we said that this is absolutely the direction that we want to move in. So we formed our local NeuroArts Collaborative, and this is a very new effort, but we're off to a wonderful start. We have started by bringing together, doing some asset mapping and looking at who are the partners who are already doing this work. And we are fortunate to have some amazing partners. I mentioned the brain science assets. We have Scripps, Florida here, the Max Planck Neuroscience Institute, and the newest on the block is the FAU Stiles-Nicholson Brain Institute. And I would like to welcome Dr. Nicole Baggins to tell us a little bit more about the Brain Institute.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Pat. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. As Pat mentioned, we are fairly young. The FAU Brain Institute was established in 2016 when my then postdoctoral mentor, Dr. Randy Blakely, who's now the executive director of the FAU Brain Institute, we both were recruited from Vanderbilt in Nashville to FAU to start a brand new Brain Institute as part of the university's strategic mission. We are now the FAU Stiles-Nicholson Brain Institute, thanks to a very generous gift and support from Mr. David Nicholson, who is a local philanthropist and all around just wonderful human being. We literally just in the past 2 weeks, moved into our brand new building, which you can see here. It's a $35 million building. We've got 60,000 square feet. It's on the FAU Jupiter campus. We do have scientists, about 70 faculty researchers spread throughout all of our FAU campuses in Southeast Florida, but Jupiter is our headquarters. At the Brain Institute, we have 3 primary focus areas. The first area is research. You can go back to the other slide, actually, please. Thank you so much. The first area is research. We have internationally recognized scientists who are conducting cutting-edge research using the newest state-of-the-art technologies and equipment that we have here. They investigate the nuts and bolts, really the basic biology of how our brains work to create our thoughts, our emotions, our behavior. Although NeuroArts isn't necessarily a primary focus for the Brain Institute right now, our researchers very much recognize that things such as social interaction, physical exercise, life experiences, and even engaging in creative activities can shape the biology of the brain and really influence mental health throughout the entire lifespan. So I believe that we at the Brain Institute do have a lot to bring to the table in this collaborative effort that we're talking about today. We've got the people, the tools, the experimental models to rigorously test hypotheses as to how different modes of the creative experience and creative expression can alter brain functions in humans. Another primary focus for us is education. We have a brand new PhD program and a STEM teacher training academy. And finally, outreach. I am the director of community engagement and programming, and we're very involved in our community and have created several public outreach programs for adults and for children. Palm Health Foundation, of course, has been a very strong partner of ours, and we greatly appreciate that partnership in all of these initiatives within our community. Now, the next slide, please. Our outreach extends not only into our community at large, but also throughout FAU. I mentioned earlier, we've got about 70 faculty members affiliated with the Brain Institute, but they have primary appointments in a wide range of colleges across FAU, from the College of Arts and Letters to the College of Social Inquiry, Engineering, Nursing. And we're hoping, as we grow our neuroscience programs and collaborate with these cross-disciplinary faculty members, we can pursue research in looking at things like how early life experience and stress really can modify brain circuits and brain function, and how those circuits can be targeted for non-pharmacological therapies for a variety of brain disorders. So again, in conclusion, this is really, really exciting. Thank you again for having me here. And I think that this is a great time that those of us in the fields of both the arts and the sciences are realizing that we really share a common vision to improve health and quality of life in our communities. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nicole. I'd like to hear from our friend Bama Lute-Steele, Cultural Council.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Patrick. And before I go to tell you a little bit about the cultural side of things here in Palm Beach County, I just wanted to back up for a moment and let you know, if you're not familiar with where we are, that this is a very large county. It has 39 cities. It's quite a comprehensive collective of cities and resources. And so when Patrick and the Palm Health Foundation connected with the Cultural Council for Palm Beach County, we were pretty excited that this conversation, we're not sure where we're going yet. It's early yet, but I think there's a lot of conversations to be had. Our mission is to champion, engage, and grow the arts, fulfilling the need for arts and cultural. You can go back to the first slide. I know it by heart. Thank you. That we champion, engage, and grow the arts in Palm Beach County, and we want to fulfill what we consider to be a very basic human need, and that is the need for arts engagement. And in some ways, I think on the Venn diagram, that's where we all meet. There's an audience for the arts, and technology itself, as Susan has said, has transformed so much of our understanding of ourselves as human beings and of our biology, but also in the way the arts are received, the way that the arts are made and created, and the way that they're shared and disseminated. So that entire experience of artful behaviors has changed, and that opens up possibilities for research, I think, into the wellness impact of the arts. So we can go on to the next slide. As I said, we have this mission to fulfill this need, but we do that at the Cultural Council for Palm Beach County by providing services to the cultural sector specifically. That means all of the arts organizations in our area and the individual artists in all disciplines who are practicing here in Palm Beach County. And there are many that we haven't connected with yet, because we had sort of the art as the object model. At the center of everything is, what is the art? What do they make? What do they perform? How does this work? And now we're starting to see, as we learn more about our creative community, that there are practitioners in our hospitals, there are practitioners in nursing homes, there are artists with tremendous training out in our community that we've not previously engaged with. So part of the network that Patrick has set up is starting to emerge, and that's of interest to us. We're also an administering organization for public and private grant programs throughout the year. A lot of our funding comes from cultural tourism, from the Tourist Development Council in Palm Beach County, where we market the destination to cultural travelers, and we invite them to come here and experience the theaters and museums and wonderful galleries and incredible talented companies that we have throughout the area. So by leveraging that, we build a healthier cultural sector. We also advocate for more funding through the state and federal government and local government. And then we do programming that helps enhance arts education in our school systems and communities. Again, I mentioned promoting cultural tourism. That's part of the economic driver for a portion of what we do, but we're a privately funded nonprofit organization. And we're really interested in being a connector. You can go to the next slide. In being a connector, a convener, and a resource for everyone. We want to bring people together here through the arts and bring the cultural sector together through our work. So that includes cultural organizations, creative professionals, art educators, tourism professionals who need to hire artists all the time for lots of reasons lately, and our community. All of this has sort of an unspoken element that relates to NeuroArts, is because it feels good. People love being engaged in the arts, and there's a wellness element to that, but we also think there's more to explore. So we've created a lot of convenings. Originally, we started in May, and we started meeting every 2 weeks and just inviting people in our own networks by word of mouth. That's how we've been building this this network here in Palm Beach County. We've also been rethinking about who else might be out there that we haven't reached yet. So we're learning from the national NeuroArts Blueprint, and we're following that model. Pat, do you want to share a little bit now about how we're operationalizing this in our community collaborative?
Thanks so much, Bama. Yeah, I'd like to bring in some language actually here from our good friends at an organization called Rethink Health. They have helped us to reconsider health in general, but also what it means to have, as they refer to it, as a portfolio of well-being in our region. And that portfolio of well-being includes, they refer to as meeting urgent needs and also fostering vital conditions for well-being. And essential to both sides of that is the idea of building civic muscle and belonging for improving health. So we very much subscribe to that language and how that gets operationalized in improving community health. And so the first thing that we started with in building the community collaborative is confirming community readiness. We've learned that in our work in different communities, that is until you do have the relationship and the trust in the community, that is work that needs to be done prior to starting this sort of collaborative, I would say. The next thing I would say is identifying a facilitator to lead and convene the effort. Host an educational event. We hosted a wonderful speakers panel last month in our Train the Brain campaign at the Max Planck Neuroscience Institute, specifically about this idea of NeuroArts. And we had various artists and scientists on the panel, and it was very well received. Frankly, anytime I bring up NeuroArts with donors and others in the arena and stakeholders, there's just a lot of energy and excitement here locally, given our rich brain science assets and our rich cultural assets. Look for existing networks, not reinventing the wheel, but how can existing networks work together with you on this collaborative effort? Connect with partners, identify those, start with that asset mapping, set meetings, grow and build the collaborative network. And I think I would again start with mapping your local assets. So next steps, I'm just going to mention a couple of these next steps for where we are. Again, this is an effort in its infancy here in Palm Beach County, but we're very excited about the future. We actually just received our first donation for starting a NeuroArts Fund, and we will be seeding that fund with some of our own funds, and looking for some grants that we'll be looking to give out in the next year, and starting some fellowship and research opportunities, working with other funding partners on the coalition, as well as the storytelling aspects, and letting folks know what we're doing as we go along and build the collaborative. And I just want to say thank you so much to the folks at the NeuroArts Blueprint, because when I first read the blueprint last year, I almost fell out of my chair, and I thought how perfect this is for the direction that we're heading in. And I reached out, and they have been wonderful technical assistance providers ever since.
Thank you, Pat, really, and thank you all for sharing this. As I'm listening to you and reading the chat, what's sort of extraordinary is how many people are doing so many extraordinary things. And I think building this fabric, this weaving together of each of our communities to whole cloth, I just have to do a shout out. My grandmother used to say, many hands makes light work. And I don't know if it's light work, but I think it's certainly lifting together makes a huge difference. So we love the work that you're doing at Palm Health, and really excited to see that grow. So next, I'd like to introduce you to the Lori M. Tisch Illumination Fund, and Rick Loveklass, who is the executive director, who is going to share a bit about the work that they're doing in New York City. So let me turn it over to you, Rick. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And
Pleasure.
it's such a pleasure to be a part of this. And if Ruth is out there, thank you, Ruth. And so let me tell you a little bit. So I'm Rick Loveklass, Executive Director of the Lori M. Tisch Illumination Fund. We are a New York City-based family foundation committed to, our mission is access and opportunity for all New Yorkers. So inherently, that's an equity and agenda around issues of disparities across neighborhoods and across communities. We have supported the arts for many years, and Lori personally, in her board capacities, and myself, both career and board, and the foundation has supported the arts, but we're always very attuned to intersections between the arts and other issues, whether it's arts and justice, other ways in which the arts can serve multiple purposes. About 2017, we decided to dive into arts and health. And we, in doing our own landscape, we saw that we could have particular impact in 3 specific areas where there were a lot of activities going on. One is around mental health stigma. Second is trauma. And then third is aging-related and neurodegenerative diseases. So we focused in on those 3 and identified at the time about 15 grantees in New York City communities. We also forged a specific institutional partnership with New York City Health and Hospitals, which is the public hospital system in New York City, serves the largest percentage of uninsured, undocumented, low-income populations with very high quality standards and very strong inclusion. And so for us, it really meant mission, again, across New York City neighborhoods. And in looking at how to develop sort of what the needs and gaps and opportunities were, we held a series of meetings with New York City Health and Hospitals leadership. And what they said is, we have great programs for patients. We have a lot of programs for communities, but our staff is desperate for programs. Burnout is an issue, various forms of stress, and even staff, medical staff still experience and suffer from stigma. And so we decided that's where to dive in, and partnered with an entity within New York City Health and Hospitals called Arts and Medicine, with a variety of programs. One of the flagships there that we're particularly excited about is something called the Community Mural Project. New York City Health and Hospitals has a large, long history of the arts in New York City public hospitals, dating back to the Depression era WPA, where a whole bunch of murals, somewhere about 60 WPA murals, were painted in public hospitals in New York City. We, with New York City Health and Hospitals, decided to create what's called the Community Mural Project, kind of building on the tradition of murals, but it's actually quite different in that it's all designed around collaboration between hospital staff, community members with the artists. So from focus groups to paint parties to various others. And the reason why this kind of came out of the discussion around staff burnout issues is that connectedness to community, collaboration, feeling rooted, all of those are mitigating factors in terms of workplace stress and integrated within a wellness framework. So so we commissioned to date 26 community murals in every New York City public hospital, every New York City long-term care, skilled nursing facility, and many of the community health centers. So, but I would like to transition to the community partnerships that we have. And to date, because we expanded our cohort, we have about 25 grantees across those three areas: stigma, trauma, aging-related diseases. Part of our model is explicitly around convening, connecting, communications. And so prior to COVID, we would hold monthly meetings. Since COVID, they became Zoom meetings, or Zoom meetings, as we call them, and really focusing on key issues like evaluation, or what a success looked like, what were the stressors that employees were going through during COVID, communication strategies. So it's all around networking, communications, and sharing. And out of that, some collaborations emerge, but in any case, it's really around learning. And so one of the grantees that has been a part of both our grantee cohort, but also the convenings and Zoom meetings, is an organization named Gibney. And I will introduce you to Yasmin, who directs a program that you'll hear about called Move to Move Beyond, and Move to Move Beyond Storytellers. So Yasmin, first, can you just tell us a little bit about what Gibney is, and what the Move to Beyond program is?
Thank you so much, Rick, and thank you everyone for being here. It's truly inspiring to see people join from all over the world. Like Rick mentioned, my name is Yasmin Ozumer-Spon. I'm the Senior Director of Community Action at Gibney, and we are a New York City-based performing arts and social action organization with a critically acclaimed contemporary dance company. We have 2 centers that are a hub of performances, rehearsals, and trainings, and a community action department that addresses gender-based violence through dance in areas of healing, prevention, research, and advocacy. And to answer your question around our Move to Move Beyond program, we have been offering hundreds of movement workshops specifically to survivors of intimate partner violence since 1999, in partnership with over 25 social service organizations. And most of the participants of our program have recently left their abusive partner and are now residing at a confidential domestic violence shelter, because leaving an abusive relationship is the most dangerous time for someone's physical safety. So I'd love to first offer a bit of context to our work by sharing what our participants might be experiencing while we're working with them. So most of the participants are trying to figure out permanent housing for themselves and their children. They might be also in the need to figure out whether it's still safe to keep their children at the school they're attending, as well as how to support themselves financially. And this is all happening after experiencing repeated trauma. And these are just a few examples of what someone might be going through once they leave an abusive relationship. So because of all these challenges and safety concerns, our program from the very beginning was built working in close partnership with the Domestic Violence Agency, Sanctuary for Families. And in 1999, Gina Gibney, our founder, alongside her company of dancers, worked closely with Beth Silverman-Yam, the former clinical director of Sanctuary for Families, the agency's social workers, as well as the survivor community, to form and pilot our Move to Move Beyond program. And going in, we already knew that we weren't going to offer dance therapy, and that we would want to create a program that complements the existing services that domestic violence agencies offer. So we defined our arts-based intervention further than that by never delving into the past or trauma at our workshops, and instead always focusing on the present, the future, the strengths of the participants, by creating a model that is not performance-based, but a process-based one, by offering the workshops at the partner organization where there are childcare services, as well as clinical support if needed. And Overall, just the goal of our workshops is to offer movement-based activities that create space for participants to connect with themselves, connect with others, and gain self-care tools. So just in a very nutshell, by collaborating with the survivor community right from the beginning, we were able to easily define our goals and unique parameters.
Thank you, Yasmin. You have partnered with the National Endowment for the Arts research team, who has been a part of the NeuroArts network as well, Sunil. Can you tell us about the research project with Teachers College and how how it came about and what your learnings were in terms of doing the project as well as what came out of the project?
Thank you so much for that question, Rick. So many, but I'll just share a few here. So the research study was an interdisciplinary collaboration between Teachers College, Columbia University, our first partner, Sanctuary for Families, and we looked at the impact of the Move to Move Beyond model. And we recently published it in an open access peer-reviewed journal, which we will share later. But some of the takeaways were developing partnerships to really strengthen what we offer to the communities. But just like any healthy relationship, it takes building trust first, especially when working with a confidential community where safety comes first. So Gibney and Sanctuary have worked together for over 2 decades before deciding to embark on a research study. And similarly with Teachers College, first we did a pilot study that was much smaller in scale to determine feasibility. And then we embarked on a 2-year study in partnership with National Endowment for the Arts and the Laurie M. Tisch Illumination Fund. And we had many adaptations and flexibilities required throughout this process because as we were starting to collect data, the COVID-19 pandemic started and we had to move to a digital model. There was an overall impact on social services and loss of childcare, just to name a few of the challenges. So looking back, we were able to adapt so swiftly because there was already trust built and because we created structures where everyone can contribute equally from their place of expertise, including Teachers College, Laurie M. Tisch Illumination Fund, as well as Sanctuary for Families. So very briefly, the results of the study showed that the female survivors of intimate partner violence who participated in the virtual workshop felt better. They experienced improved affect, mood, and reduced tension. And they found new ways to express themselves, attune to their bodies, learn new self-care habits, and build community as they engage in the workshop. We will share the link of the published study in the chat in case anyone is interested in learning more about it.
Thank you. And I know we are tight on time, but I want to ask you before moving into sort of the convening and connecting, just about the Move to Move Beyond storytellers, which came out of Move to Move Beyond, and explain how that's different.
Yeah, thank you for asking that about that program, because as you mentioned, it's also with the survivor community, but it's quite different in many aspects from the original Move to Move Beyond program. And it's a great example of collaborating closely with the specific community we're working with as arts and health practitioners is informative. So as Rick mentioned, through our Move to Move Beyond workshops, we started working with a specific group from Sanctuary for Families called Survivor Leaders. And it's a group where survivors who have been out of an abusive relationship for a period of time can now join to raise awareness around intimate partner violence. And some of the survivor leaders who participated in our program expressed connecting deeply with movement and wanting to share their stories as an advocacy tool. And because they were at a different part of their healing journey, and this would elevate what they were already doing, which was advocacy, we said yes. So it became a performance as advocacy model where there's an option for participants to dive into the past and trauma if they choose to and perform stories to raise awareness. And this is also a great segue into how the Laurie M. Tisch Illumination Fund allowed us to deepen our collaboration with this community. Thanks to our partnership, we were able to start offering regular gatherings that created room for process and where the participants of this group receive compensation for their time. And in formalizing the program, at first, we really took the time and looked inside and collaboratively created our processes. So to give a concrete example, we renamed the program together. Some of the participants no longer identified with the word survivor. So we renamed the program something everyone identified with, the storytellers. And this deepening of the program and this collaboration was possible thanks to you, Rick.
Thank you. As I mentioned early on, we connect our grantees through periodic in-person and Zoom meetings, and you've participated since the very beginning. Can you share kind of what, to what extent that has had value, or in what ways, or if there are any examples, because I think that is a theme today, is really around coalition building.
Thank you, Rick. And before answering that, I do want to briefly uplift an aspect of your success framework at the Illumination Fund, which is the grantee determined impact, as it is quite powerful. Today, I have shared about how Gibney's programming always centers our communities. And this is possible because you give us agency to determine our own impact. And we then in return are able to collaborate with the community we work with to determine what success looks like together. So I just want to uplift that. But going back to your original question, the convenings, the Zoom meetings have had such a profound impact on our work, and similar to what's happening here today. Before giving an example around how, I want to start with the why the spaces that you created is so important. Even though we're located here in New York City, where there's a growing field of arts and health, our work can still feel quite siloed. And by bringing together community members that work with different modalities, from art therapy to art-based interventions, using diverse art forms from visual arts to dance, you really create a space of learning, sharing, idea exchange. And not only you break those silos for us, but you encourage collaboration. And there are many examples that come to my mind, but in the interest of time, I will just share one. As we all probably remember, when the pandemic first began, there were stay-at-home orders. During this time, the rates of intimate partner violence increased, and we as Gibney were closely working with our partners to figure out how to shift our programming to best offer support. And I remember this vivid moment of receiving an email from you inviting us to a Zoom gathering, and how it created this visceral reaction of relaxation in my body. I remember at that meeting, hearing from everyone about the different challenges they were facing and how they were planning to shift. And it was quite impactful to connect and share these practices. And it was impactful because it again broke that feeling of being siloed, and also led to new ideas, from offering our work in a pre-recorded format to including survival resources to our communities, such as where to get free meals. So it's very much aligned with today's theme, this type of coalition building in New York City between communities and arts and health practitioners has both direct impact that we can pinpoint to, as well as indirect impact that ripples out to the different communities we work with. And very similar to the NeuroArts Blueprint framework, in my opinion, this is how individual programs become a field.
And that is very explicit within the NeuroArts Blueprint, is the issue of fragmentation and silos across both practitioners and researchers, and that part of the field building is to connect people and build the common knowledge, as Susan described. Susan, I am going to turn it back to you. Again, we could talk on, but it's up. I turn it back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you both. This is really extraordinary program, and to just hear a piece, a sliver of what's happening in New York City is really, really wonderful. So we end on the hour. So I want to open it up to questions. I think just a couple things to share here. And if you're looking at the chat, you can see that there are many communities all over the world that are are saying they're interested in starting a community NeuroArts coalition in their area, or they have one and they're looking for specific kinds of things, we will make sure that we harness all of the things that are in the chats, create an asset map, and send who has put their information in this chat so that everyone can have access to it. And I'll talk a little bit more at the end of the hour on some of the next steps on sort of trying to create a structure on how to do this work more systematically across the globe. There are a couple folks that have talked about place-based work, and local work is place-based. Even if technology is a catalyst, you're still in community. And there are also a number of people on the call that are architects, space designers, interior designers, thinking about the role of biophilia and nature in community. And so I just wanted to make sure that when we think about the arts, we think about the arts quite broadly. I even make a joke that we even think about culinary arts as an art, and in some ways that may be the best thing to bring people together. So we have a number of questions, and as I said at the beginning of the event, the questions that we don't answer on this call will go for another 5 or 7 minutes. We will make sure that we answer them in a group email to everyone. And one of the big questions I think that we're getting is, will the slides be shared? Will this recording be shared? And the answer is yes to both. If you are interested in receiving the slides that you've seen today, just send us an email at info@neuroartsblueprint.org. And a slide will come up at the end of this time with that, but it's info@neuroartsblueprint.org, and we'll make sure that you get the slides. We will also be posting this entire webinar video on the website, hopefully next week. With the holidays, it may be a little bit later, but within the next 10 days or so, this will be up online so that you can review it again and share it if that's something that you think might be helpful as well. So there's a couple of questions in here that I want to open up to Palm Health and to the Lori Tisch Illumination Fund. One question that we have here is, are creative arts therapists part of this, and how are they incorporated into this mix? Rick, I'm going to start with you, and maybe if you could talk a bit about the range of artists and arts programs that are included in the work that you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and thank you for asking. When we started the Arts and Health Initiative, we were looking at practicing artists and arts organizations, not necessarily arts therapists and arts therapy as a discipline. But what we found was that a number of the community organizations had hired arts therapists to do whether sort of formal therapeutic or simply serving, sort of technical assistance, developing curricula, things of that nature. So it is, as you point out in the, in the blueprint, a range of practice. And but we were really looking at our work from an arts and artist vantage point, not around sort of the psychological aspects and the clinical.
And Patrick, do you want to share your thoughts about that?
Sure. We have had the interest of several folks who are in arts therapy, various modalities, and particularly when it comes to better integration within our behavioral health system of care. And we will be continuing to explore that with the art therapists and with local funding sources, actually. There's a great deal of interest in that arena, as well as in the hospital setting and hospice setting. Yeah.
And I know in the work that we've done with the blueprint across the board, what we've seen is a spectrum of people that are using the arts, from PhD music therapists, creative arts therapists, social workers, public health, OT, PT, recreation therapy, nature therapy, and many others that are using the work in community who may be community artists. And so what I think is so beautiful about the community-based work is that it can run the spectrum of different ways to enter this from different types of training and different types of experiences. And I think culture is also a very important part of this work, making sure that communities are represented and that they're bringing, that the art is coming from the community as well. I want to address a question about metrics and quantifying and qualifying work. There's multiple things that are happening with the blueprint in terms of coalescing the field and thinking about what does success look like, what is research, what is evidence. And I think one of the things with the community NeuroArts coalitions that's really interesting is each community is defining for itself what success looks like and what each organization is thinking about that. But also along the way, there are many ways of knowing. And I think as you know, there's basic science, there's impact studies, there are evaluations of service, and I think one of the things that's really interesting about bringing all of these groups together is to really together help to create some best practices and some agreed upon criteria around what does success look like for arts, health, and well-being. And it isn't what other people say it should be, it's what the field is creating as consensus statements. And so I think we're at the beginning of that, and this conversation is really helping to create a container for that. And both Rick and Pat, I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about what does success look like for you, and what does it mean for impact?
Sure. I'll start with just saying that we see this as an exercise in field building for the long term. As I've said to you guys many times, we're not looking for NeuroArts to be a flash in the pan and a good idea, but really looking to embed this field locally, given the assets that we have, and institutionally, and that includes through various forms of research, certainly with the Brain Institute and others in that arena, where the research can get very technical and very quantifiable and measurable, but also in other ways. We use a tool called SenseMaker, and it is more of a quantitative, qualitative research tool to build knowledge in this space. And it's collecting stories, but it's also where the folks who are submitting the stories self-signify the importance of what it is that they're conveying. And so that is a whole nother dimension to research in this area that we look forward to exploring that.
Thank you. That's exciting. And what I would just say, because Yasmin referred to looking to the grantees to define what success looks like, but it's actually, there's sort of multiple levels, because there is the component of what does a particular organization consider success, whether it's around intervention, whether it's around the organization, what, any whatever they define, and we just talk about that. But then what we find is that because we have a portfolio of grantees, there are success metrics that cover that are commonalities. And so whether that's collaboration across sectors, whether it's building a pipeline of future leaders, and another one is building and amplifying knowledge in the field, which comes through things like what Yasmin talked about in terms of the publication, or maybe speaking at conferences. But so our success metrics, are, based upon those commonalities coupled with what an organization looks at, whether it's clinical or quantitative or qualitative, but we really defer to them, and it's simply a conversation to determine that, and that's what they report on.
Thank you. I know we're at top of the hour. That we have not answered anywhere near all of the really great questions. There's some great questions about measurement, which I think, to Pat's point, is that we're in this for the long game, and we need to figure out how we come together, how we look at success, and how we do that in the spirit of arts first, arts, health, and well-being. And so there's a lot more to talk about. And as I said earlier, we'll be sure to answer some of these questions, at least begin the conversation. I want to thank everyone for such a rich contribution to this discussion. I think we're really just getting started here. As I said earlier, our goal is to create a global network of local community NeuroArts coalitions that are interdisciplinary, that bring all of these stakeholders together in community arts programs, artists, creative arts therapists, research partners, local stakeholders, all that are committed to addressing health and well-being issues through the arts and aesthetic experiences. So we need to know more. We need to understand more what you need and how the NeuroArts Blueprint can best support you. We think we can create a structure that will allow for dialogue and exchange, and ultimately maybe some consensus statements and tools that will be helpful in your community. And that's something that we think we can help to build over the next year. It's one of our major priorities in the infrastructure building that I mentioned earlier. So to better understand what you need, we'll be distributing a survey in the coming weeks. Please feel free to share it with your networks, with others that you think are interested. We'll look at that work carefully, and then the next step will be to bring together some stakeholder gatherings to check some assumptions to make sure we got it right and that we're hearing what you're asking for. And so over the next couple of months, we'll be working on that and coming back together. In the meantime, please sign up for the newsletter on the NeuroArts Blueprint website, and look for an announcement for our first year progress report webinar that will be in early 2023. We're really excited to share the work that we've done over the first year and set the plan for the next year to come. So thank you again for your time, and we're really looking forward to working together. And happy holidays. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.